This is Dr. Joseph Munsell. I'm back. Chapter 7, Part 2, after the metaphor. Speaking of metaphor, rev up, flea and tick protection. Right then, rev it up. You're going to rev up your flea and tick stuff. Rev it up, Finn. All right. And celebrity endorsement. I don't know who. Tony Stewart. Okay. I'm a month behind on my Southern living. Look, ooh, it's a little window or a door. What's inside? Ooh! Invite color in. Color. It's not just for walls anymore. Red door. Red. Turn this page for some inspiring and surprising ways to invite color into your home. Awesome. Okay. So more on sort of social reality. Again, I said last time that I really, you don't need to know all the Kenneth Burke stuff. That's it. But there is stuff, if you want to read all the stuff, you can. But they do talk about these important ideas of attitude, the negative. Basically, there is no nots in reality. There is no not is. Things just is. Language creates not ises, which creates hierarchies, and therefore perfection. And we can't reach that, so we have guilt. But in any case, I think, and you can see again the stuff, the extra stuff. I think the most important stuff in here for your education and for the paper is, again, this is a repeat. You might notice that any sort of book like this textbook has recurring themes, and sometimes recurring themes are the most important things. Identification, identification, identification is very, very important. So how can you use language in a way to identify with your audience, or visuals, like if you're a NASCAR fan or whatever. So identification occurs when we share, this is on top of page 191, it occurs when we share similar ways of viewing the world with someone else. Consider an advertisement for a fitness club. Advertisements for exercise clubs often use guilt to induce audience members to join the club and achieve their fitness goals. Yeah, they do. You might have a problem with your health, blah, 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 whatever. But the idea here is that, obviously, we want to identify with people. People want to identify with us. And so, for instance, if you are a Southerner, or even not a Southerner, if you want to identify with the South in some sort of fashion, you can go through here. You don't have to live in the South. You can just go, you can go to Ruby Tuesdays. And that's, Jump into summer with Ruby Tuesday and Southern living. What if you could capture the essence of summer on a plate? Okay. I want summer. I identify with summer. In any case, beaches. But we talked about this before through visuals, whatever. You're trying to identify with certain people. So folks will use language like fun for the family, blah 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 blah. If you're a family. Or think of the vowels thing, and people will use language in a particular way to reach target audiences. So that audience will identify with the message. Are you a independent? Blah 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 blah. And then so that's identification is very, very important to me. And the other stuff, naming and framing. I've already talked about framing. But naming is very, very important. Just the names that we give things, the names we give tourist attractions, the names we give. It talks about Mein Kampf and all that type of stuff. Think about the ideas of liberal versus conservative and what the connotations are with that. To some folks, liberal is a dirty word. To some folks, conservative is a dirty word. And then think about issues like Black Lives Matter. It's just that these words are loaded with lots of different things. So how we name stuff is very, very important. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's really, really interesting, the controversy just over the idea of Black Lives Matter, as if that means, I mean, I can't remember what Giuliani said, but as if it is inherently racist or something like that, because but in any case, how we name things is very important. Is this a terrorist attack or not? How we name something depends. Is this a act of God? Is whatever. So how we name things is very, very important. And then framing. I've already talked about framing. And then I'll let you read this stuff about spin and spin control. There's lots of stuff about ethics and spin control. And you don't need to know the pentaf for this stuff. But in any case, and we have the comic frame and all that type of stuff. But long and short of it is, identify through language. Oftentimes what you name something, like name an actual attraction, Carowinds, medieval times. What's in there, there's lots of different things out there. They're named particular things for particular reason, to help you identify. For neighborhoods, if you want to be all fancy, even though there's this legacy of slavery always with it, plantation something. In any case, so the redemption stuff. Basically, the idea is we always have guilt, right? Because we're never perfect. We always screw up. And so we want to assuage that guilt in some way. And oftentimes, and I say this a little bit differently than what the book says, we want to go through that process of purification. How do we deal with that guilt? We can punish ourselves, which might be, going to the gym. I feel guilty because I gained weight over, Christmas break, and so now I'm going to go to a gym, which people do. Everybody joins a gym in January, and then by the end of January, they are no longer a member of that gym. Or we can scapegoat others and get mad at people for feeding us. Notice how Hitler scapegoated the Jews for the economic situation in Germany in the 30s. And so there's other ways. Generally, we try to punish ourselves, or we scapegoat others, or we transcend everything. We feel we shouldn't be guilty because of some sort of higher, hierarchy. What I did was actually right, even though it was against the law, whatever that might have been. And we can frame things as a comedy or a tragedy. Oftentimes, we see in a lot of late night television, everything like that about politics. Folks are the fools, they're idiots. But of course, we can also have a tragic hero become sort of the fall guy. I think of an example right here for our situation. Both are sort of scapegoating, but here's the thing. I like the way it talks about on the bottom of page 194. I think that's sort of important, and I found a little thing here, a little graph that might help you out. It says, tragic purification requires that the guilty be punished or removed, or the tragic scapegoat metaphorically killed. In comic purification, the scapegoat is simply laughed at, encouraged to change his or her ways. Comic purification recognizes that all people are at times mistaken. Like tragic purification, comic purification follows 4 stages, blah, 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 sort of, kind of. In the labeling of the disruption of order as guilt, persuaders who use language to achieve comic purification call the disruption an incongruity. Something is wrong, the way things are, then they sort of belittle the fool. Often takes the form of humor, cartoon, sarcasm, satire, irony, and all that type of stuff. Enlightenment results when the fool reaches a higher level of knowledge, if that's possible. He talks about Jon Stewart and talking about Donald Trump and all this type of stuff. The idea here is that when it comes to the dramatistic redemption stuff, oftentimes as through language and that very last part of on page 195 is important. Requiring symbols used also disrupts this order, requiring that we use language to rid ourselves of our society of guilt. As we do, we identify with others. Persuaders use symbols to name objects in the world, blah, blah, blah. So, we're always feeling guilt. What's this? We want to purify. We want to purify and get rid of that guilt so we are redeemed, but we're always guilty. So, guilty because I've been working too hard, blah, 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 or I'm guilty because, here's, my house does not look like a Southern Living house. What do I do about that? I go buy a Southern Living magazine to redeem myself and to see all of the things that I could change in my house and stuff that I could buy, so I can go buy something and make it look more, or put something in my garden, or I can go buy at the thrift store a particular wicker chair or something like that and make it look like Southern Living, and I feel better about myself. Or I can buy a certain kind of mustard or something to make myself feel more Southern, because I'm not feeling Southern enough. In any case, ooh, it's a cow. The most important meal of the day shouldn't mess with you. Lactate. The milk that doesn't mess with you. The point being is that oftentimes, particularly with political stuff, oftentimes folks will scapegoat groups of people for the problems of our society. We see that a lot, unfortunately. Comedians oftentimes will use more of the comic frame. With advertisements and things like that, and various marketing strategies for tourist attractions, what you might be interested in is how is there some sort of implicit order, and there's some sort of implicit sort of value system, and it is some way sort of implying that we need to redeem ourselves in some way. Maybe we work too hard, maybe we need to be better parents to our kids, maybe we need to learn more about history, maybe we need to do this to be more, to identify with being more whatever. And so do you see those strategies, and could you also use those strategies? I know that's very vague. I hope that makes some sort of sense. But before we get to the electronic eloquence stuff, and I've already sort of talked about that, but there's so much in here. There's so much in chapter 7. I do think in this section that's sort of past the metaphor stuff, I mean, the larger idea, again, and I've said this time and time again, the language that we have sort of helps craft our social reality, how we see the world. And Burke has a particular theory about all that type of stuff. I think it boils down to identification, so no identification. And also a part of that is how we name things, and the framing of things I've already talked about. But also it's part of this, or could be part of this process of constant redemption. You know, how do people try to persuade us to do certain things to make ourselves feel better about ourselves, because we're always guilty about something. So that's another thing to sort of look at. It's about 15 minutes. Hopefully that made some sort of sense. Hopefully you're learning stuff. But I don't know. Well, from the papers you are. Okay. I'll be back at some point. Maybe not today. Maybe later. But chapter 7 and 8 this week. Got the new thread up. Hope it rains again today.